What's up? Good Sunday morning, folks. This is Tasha today with I Do, I Did, I Don't on What's in It for the Black People Media. So glad to be with you this morning. As you are joining, I want you to please like and share, add your comments. Please like both the I Do, I Did, I Don't page and the What's in It for the Black People Media page. It's important that you like that one because you get the notifications as the shows are going live for all of them. So I am happy to be with you all this morning. Thanks for joining. We are going to be talking today about preparing for divorce. And I have a guest with me today who is attorney Alfred Ivy, who has done divorce cases and will talk to us about the perspective of both the attorney and what we need to do to be prepared to be successful going into a divorce. I think you're going to appreciate his perspective, which is a little different than some attorneys. I think is very upfront and will help us to really consider what's really what's really already predetermined and what is negotiable in the process. So glad you are here. Glad you are joining us. And this should be a really good show this morning. So we'll be looking for your comments and your questions as he is talking about getting prepared for going through a divorce and going to divorce court. And what that process is like as you're looking for your attorney as well. What are the things you should consider? What are the questions you should ask? Where do you have to get your mind in the process of getting there so that you can be efficient and spend the least amount of money, hopefully, and actually be, kind of get to the other side of it. So let's get started and bring him on as soon as we get a moment. So when you start thinking about getting prepared for divorce, right? In a cooperative manner and in some way have what's called an uncontested divorce, which means you really don't have, it's not very complex. You don't have a lot of property necessarily that you need to have divided. You are, both parties are willing and moving forward and kind of thinking about this from a cooperative standpoint. Or excuse me, you can go into what is more of a contested divorce. It's a little more complex. You've got assets and property that need to be divided, things like that. And maybe you're not on the same page. Maybe you are not both thinking we're going to divide this stuff equally, because dividing it equitably and dividing it equally are not the same in the court of law. Some states do say that dividing it equitably means equally 50-50. And then there are other states that say equitably is not necessarily a 50-50 division of what that property is. And so, in those states, Illinois is not one of them, as far as I know. But in those states, like California, for example, I know that is one of those states. It doesn't matter. What you think you should get, how much the law already dictates is 50% of whatever you own in terms of property interests. In other states like Illinois, it may not be 50-50 and there is more room to negotiate and kind of make your case. So you want to understand those kinds of things as you are going into getting prepared and having the negotiations and understanding where you stand, what's predetermined, and where you really have room to move. There's a lot of room, but there's a lot that's already predetermined for you that's pretty formulaic from the law. And I think that a lot of times we don't realize that and we start fighting over things that really the court's already made the decision for us. Now, you can start negotiating to figure out, where do you give and take? What would the other person like to have versus what you have already? And what you want to have. That's important to understand of the assets. What is it that you really want to have versus that it doesn't make sense to fight about and to really go back and forth over. If you know what you want, then you have a way to bargain for, all right, you can have this. I don't really care about this. You can have that thing. And, as long as I can have these things. So I want you guys to really, as you think about this, kind of understand from this perspective. I think had I known that going in, this would have felt very different, the process for me, because like I said, there's so much that's already predetermined by the court that we don't even know is predetermined. The attorneys do. And a lot of times they will tell you right away that actually many times there are some attorneys that will tell you right away, this is what you need to do, or this is how this is going to turn out. And then there are others that are going to take their time kind of moving along, trying to figure out kind of where you are in the process. Do you want to fight? Because that means more money for them. Or, do they need to walk you slowly to the realization that you're not going to get what you think you're going to get? And so I want to make sure that you guys understand sort of how this works. Like I said, it would have been really a whole lot easier for me if I had understood that going into the process. So let me know along the way, what questions do you have? And so as you're getting prepared for your divorce, you can take that perspective that this is going to be a battle, and that totally the other party is, because if you don't want to fight but the other party does, then it becomes very difficult to do this in an amicable way. But if you're both like, you know what, this is where it is, there's nothing that is going to change, we know that this relationship is over, we're both agreeing that we need to move forward with divorce, then it becomes a little bit of a more civil negotiation, I would say. So there are some critical things that you need to do in the process. And a few of those things are figuring out, first of all, what state you're in and what the state law already dictates for you. And you can absolutely look up those state statutes around divorce so that you understand things like how property is divided, things like how child support is calculated, whether or not that's going to be something that has any room or not. How does spousal support work? Many times there is just a formula for it. They're plugging some information into a spreadsheet, and that's what you have, and it's just what it is. And so there's no need to I understand it's difficult. You have to get your mind around the fact that you might be losing something in the process, or you might be gaining something. So I'm going to take a break real quick, and we will be back on the other side. Again, make sure that you're sharing the broadcast so that for the benefit of others. See you in a minute.
WIFTVPN. Welcome to Inhale, Exhale, you guys. We're your health home girls, Dr. Tanks Lee and Danny Time. We are being joined today by a guest, Samantha Allen, who's going to work with us today about attachment styles.
Preoccupied, anxious, that's more so a child that comes from a background where the parent or the caregiver was kind of all over the place. You didn't know what you were going to get, so you were clinging to them when you did have their attention, because sometimes I might have it, other times I might not. Because of that, it creates an anxiousness in the child, whereas when I get your attention, I want to hold on to it. I want to make sure, so I might cry when you leave, or I always want you around. I'm craving your attention. Mother-father relationship, the father passed away, now the mother is over busy, she's working all the time, she doesn't have as much attention as she once had for the children, so now this created an anxious attachment style. Those adults grow up more, considered more clingy in relationships, always wanting attention or feeling like I need to make sure we're okay, fear abandonment, fear that we might be breaking up or you might be leaving me alone, so I might check in with you more often, I might call you more. I just need to be assured that everything is okay with our relationship. That anxiousness part is the anxiety of the relationship, of always thinking something might be going wrong. If I called you, you don't answer. Are you upset with me? What did I do? Let's figure this out. Let's work this out. You're always kind of on edge about where your relationship will go.
You get a piece of paper, write down the event, the thought, emotion, and then logic. So in this case, say that your boyfriend didn't text you back. Okay, that's the event. What is your thought? Oh, well, he doesn't care. What's your emotion? I feel unworthy. What's the logic? Well, maybe he's asleep. So you gotta do that. That's addressing some of the symptoms. But overall, you want to engage self-love and self-discovery. right? And just kind of reprogramming your subconscious.
You better be careful, baby, be careful. This is a baby making song. Better be careful what your radio on. This is a baby making song. Better be careful what your radio on. You let down your hair when you're feeling sexy. You bite on your lip when you're holding your tongue. You uncross your legs, yeah, without even speaking. Your body is screaming. You wanna make love. I can hear your body language. You ain't said I run, but I know what you feel. 'Cause I can hear your body language saying.
All right, welcome back to I Do, I Did, I Don't on What's in It for the Black People Media. This is Tasha, and I want you to like, share, and follow the broadcast. As I said, make sure you're following What's in It for the Black People Media so you will get notifications when the shows are coming on. And so we are talking today about getting prepared for a divorce. What do you need to do in the process of preparing? You know that you're headed in that direction, or even you're thinking about it and you need to understand what the process is like. There's a lot that you need to understand up front before you head in that direction, whether you know for sure that you're going to be divorcing or whether you're kind of questioning if this is where I want to go. And so, number one, we talked about understanding your state statutes. Really, really important, because many of the things that you will have to negotiate are already predetermined for you based on the state statute. Things like how the property will be divided, things like how child support is calculated, how spousal support is calculated. So it's really important that you understand up front, this is just what it is. And many times we don't know that. And so we're trying to negotiate on things that honestly we don't have a lot of room to negotiate because the statute already says this is what it is. What is it? You know, how do we determine who the custodial parent is if there are children involved? And is there even a custodial parent? So, for example, in Illinois, there is no longer a custodial parent. It's what's called a parenting, your parenting allocation of time, which can be 50-50 or it can be something else that's different from that. But there's not the same who has quote unquote custody anymore. And that all of that changed a couple of years ago, or a little more than a couple of years ago now, when Illinois went from being a fault state, if you will, to a no fault state, meaning we're not going through trying to figure out whose fault the divorce is. It just is. There are irreconcilable differences. Period. The end. And let's figure out how we're going to divide, you know, how we're going to settle this so that the two parties can move on. And the whole intent of doing that was to make the process faster, but that's not how it necessarily goes all the time either. So again, the statutes are important. Absolutely look those up. You can do a quick internet search and figure out to find the statutes for your state. So we're going to bring in our guest, who is Alfred Ivy, an attorney, who's going to help us to talk through this and navigate a little bit more and just understand where do we have room, what should we do in preparing, how do we start to consider attorneys, what's the best way of talking to them and trying to figure out are they the best fit and making an ultimate choice, or whether we need an attorney or not. So welcome, Al. It's very good to see you. And I'm glad that you're able to join us today and help the listeners to understand. Basically, just give us a little bit more knowledge. All right. So we're getting there. We can see him. All right. Well, I'm going to keep going. And just talk about this. So I've seen a whole lot of stuff that tells me that there's some, uh, one of the books I saw was called a divorce battle plan workbook. All right, I think I can hear him now. I think he is back. Got a lot of
I am.
background noise, so I'm gonna need you to kind of
Mute.
help me. No, don't mute because we need to hear you. But just
Okay.
as much as you can, help with the background noise to keep it to a minimum so we can hear you really well. So good morning, sir.
Hold on. Hey, good morning. Give me 1 second. I just got to move around a little bit.
Okay.
Don't worry. I'm here. It's just that I'm trying to figure out this technology. This is a new one for me.
All right. It shouldn't be that too difficult for you. So let's just keep on going. When we selecting attorneys, we want to make sure they know how to use the technology. So let's keep going here and talk through. As I'm selecting an attorney, what are the things I want to consider? And even before we get to that point, what are the things that I want to make sure that I can do? So if you've already gone through understanding that this is going to be a non-contested divorce, then I don't think you really need an attorney. There are plenty of options that you have to either do it yourself, or you have the option to go ahead, mute Al, until you settled. So you have the option to either do it yourself, or you can't totally do it yourself. But then you have options of things like LegalZoom, for example. That's going to ask you some of the basic questions that you have, and you need to, they need to know in order to give you the paperwork that's necessary and kind of all the directions you need to go fill things out. It's an option that's available to you. It's an option for you to figure it all out and do it yourself. Or you can go with an attorney like Alfred Ivy here, who's going to help you really to facilitate the process and understand how to navigate the legal system, which, we have to demystify a lot of times. So, Al, let's start talking about this now. As we're getting prepared for divorce, as an attorney, someone comes to you and says, I'm going to get divorced. I need to hire you as an attorney. What are your first questions to that person so that they can get prepared for the process?
I think probably a couple of quick questions that I usually ask. Why do you want to get divorced? And what is it that you want out of this process? Typically are two of the main reasons, things that I ask in the very beginning.
So
people oftentimes go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, tell me why it matters when you ask the question, why do you want to get divorced?
Because it helps the attorney gauge the person's client personality or litigant personality. So think about it like this: people who are getting divorced because they are very, very angry about something their partner did or failed to do. There are lots of times they are harder to reason with. They're operating from a position of extreme hurt, extreme pain. They haven't reached a point of resolution. Divorce is emotional for them. Emotional clients are the typical client, but they create their own set of problems, because then the second question, which is, what do you want out of this? It's difficult to get them to be reasonable and see what is possible versus, I want to take him for everything he has because of this, that, and the other. So those are two important questions that I ask.
Okay. So now you know where your client is, and let's say it sounds like more often than not, you get emotional clients, right? Which it's a very emotional process, and that's understandable that this relationship is ending, and there's going to be a high level of emotion. And so knowing that, then how do you proceed then with that client? They've said, okay, this is why I want to get divorced. You're kind of thinking now, this might be a highly emotional one. So how do you now start to advise that client so that they can actually move forward in the process?
Well, I guess then I go to a couple other questions. I ask, tell me about their partner, their spouse. What is that person like? Is that person, the same level of emotional that they are? They angry? What's it like to talk to that person? And then the next question I ask is, have you gone to marriage counseling? And those will be the two next questions that I ask.
Okay. All right. So what questions do you think informed clients need to ask you as an attorney that they're considering hiring?
Probably after we have a few more conversations or a few more, question exchanges. What's my divorce philosophy? I mean, because divorce philosophy for attorneys actually does matter. There are some attorneys who are very, very aggressive, and people want to hire those attorneys because they are aggressive. I have a different approach. My aggressiveness only really comes out when necessary. So I'm not usually trying to be mean or litigious to any person on either side, simply because at the end of the day, it's not my life. I don't have to live it. I don't have to deal with the consequences of it if it goes badly. So rather than do that, I try to pay attention to what it is that my clients need, but also try to introduce them to myself and say, hey, my job is to get you out. Now you can fight your way out, or we can walk out, but I'm going to get you out of this. Many clients want to fight. Many clients say they want to walk out, but really what they really want to do, they want to fight. And so the questions that I ask about, why they're getting divorced, what is it that they want? What is their spouse like? Have they gone to marriage counseling, are all meant to gauge what type of divorce they want to have. Some people want, they want a simple, hey, this is run its course. We both agree that we want to part ways, to, this Mobley Bobley has done me like this, and I am looking to destroy him or her. There are guys who actually want to destroy their wives because there's never really a good reason to want to destroy somebody, but people do. They really do.
Yeah, it happens.
So I try to gauge who they are. Yeah.
Okay, so you said something in there that just really has me interested. As you said, people want to fight. And I'm trying to understand if people want to fight because they don't understand the process and they don't understand how much is already predetermined for them, and they think that there's a way that you need to fight to get what you want, or are they just, I guess there is no or. Is it really just that people just don't get how the process really works and how much is predetermined and where they can and can't fight?
Now, the interesting thing about that, and this is very interesting, nothing is predetermined until you fight. People don't know that. Nothing is predetermined until you start fighting. You have great flexibility in how you set up child support. You have great flexibility how you handle retirement plans, stock options, homes, real estate. Well, homes is real estate, but visitation or whatever. Nothing is predetermined until you start the fight. And so because people don't, and this is why the marriage counseling question comes into play so much, is because individuals who are able to talk to one another are able to resolve a lot of issues to their mutual benefit. But people who are not able to talk to one another can't go to counseling, can't engage in civil discourse with one another. They trigger the predetermined aspects of the divorce. Nothing is concrete until you start fighting. So it's actually the exact opposite. I was listening to you this morning. I was as I was driving in. We're in Wisconsin now. Today's the church anniversary, so we had to get up here early for that and get some things done. So it pushed me a little bit behind. But as I was listening to your introduction, I was like, yeah, that may be something that we perhaps maybe as attorneys we don't explain very clearly. But the more you fight, the more rigid the process becomes. It's very, very flexible. We don't tell you to want anything, to not want anything, to do anything. That is all client determined. And when I say client determined, I'm not necessarily talking about my client. I'm talking about the other person. I've done divorces where my clients have been very peaceful, but their spouse has been very litigious and they fought over everything. I once had a case where they fought over the dining room table, literally.
Wow.
The
Okay, so
dining
you're
room
gonna
table.
have to.
His aunt.
So you're gonna have to break
Yeah,
this
they fought
down
over
for
dining
us.
room.
When you say
Mm-hmm.
that, and yes, that's definitely emotional. Now we get into the dining room table. Who knows? It may have been an heirloom from the great grandmother or something, and that's why it was so important. Or it may have just been,
Yeah.
I need to win something, and the dining room table will make me feel better. I don't know which one it was. However, you're going to have to explain this to us, because you said there's a great deal of flexibility and nothing's predetermined, but then at the same time, a lot of the statutes say this is what it is. It's a simple calculation around child support, for example, or spousal support.
When you fight.
So help us
Yeah.
understand that when you say it's not predetermined, but it kind of is based on the statutes.
That's because the statutes try to take out the fight. So think about it like this. I won't say we'll use fictitious persons, so an individual is married. They have a marriage that's lasted, let's say 10 years. So, and they get along pretty well with their spouse. They have 2 children together. Child support under the old guidelines used to be set at 28% for 2 children. Okay. Now you can go, set child support based on old guidelines. You can also go under the new guidelines, which take into consideration the needs of the children, the time spent with the children, and income and abilities of the parties, and those things. Or you can do something that's totally different. Say, hey, look, I tell you what, in exchange for X, Y, and Z, I'll take care of everything that's associated with the child. Nobody argues with what it is that you want until you fight about what it is that you want. And it's such a strangeness. But when I tell people like we're lawyers, we do what it is that our clients ask for us to do, they never really process how much power they actually have to determine what it is that they want. The fight is always on the client side. Well, I take that back. There are a few lawyers I've run into who will make someone who wants to work things out fight because they either enjoy the fight, they think that the client is being too easygoing, they think that the client could get more, and many times you can get more, but then it also comes with this is corresponding, backlash in terms of time, in terms of stress, in terms of money, that sometimes more isn't really a whole lot more. When people say, well, I don't want to fight, but I want everything that I'm entitled to. And so I ask the question, what do you feel entitled to? Which goes back to my second question, which is, what do you want from this? And so when you ask people who they are, and they introduce you to who they are, you get a sense of, whether it's going to be something that you can work details out with, or it's going to be a fight. The majority of my divorces actually are fights because that's what they decide to do. And it's so funny because I used to advertise that I'd only do uncontested divorces. I do husband, wife. You come in my office together, we sit down, we talk. One of you hires me and we go in and do that. And very rarely would people take me up on that. So, you have an option where you can get divorce total package for both parties, or, like 3,000 or less, 2,500 or less. And they choose the 5,000 route every single time. I'm like, I don't understand why you want to pay, double, triple, but, every single time they come in, they're like, nope, we ain't gonna be able to work it out.
Yeah.
I hate him, he hates me, and I want every dime that I can squeeze out of him. And so I used to tell this story. I say, do it like rich folk do. Rich folk, they pre-negotiate things. They have prenuptial agreements in place. They sit down and they talk about things. They They discuss what the assets are in advance. They have, estate plans in place that calculate a lot of the things that, people with less money could do, should do, but almost never do.
Right.
Um, you know, so and don't get me wrong, their divorces are for the same reasons. Almost all divorces have infidelity in them. I mean, I say it so often that my friends think I'm crazy. I'll say, everybody cheats. It's like, I didn't cheat. I'm like, yeah, somebody cheated. It's just, just sit back, think about all of your friends who got divorced, and the majority of them had some form of infidelity in it, whether it was sexual, whether it was emotional, somebody stepped outside the marriage, but then that infidelity that does not always take into consideration the problems that led to it, or were around. I won't say led to it, because nothing certainly leads to that. That's a choice people make.
So I think I get you.
But
what you're saying is there's some type of infidelity that's not necessarily someone cheated sexually in the relationship, but it could be financial infidelity or something where the deal was broken in some way for the relationship, and now the relationship is on the rocks, and they're landed in your office trying to figure out if they're going to not really trying to figure it out. At that point, they're decided, really, I think I'm going to get divorced. And so there are a couple of questions that are out here around how certain things are handled. And so how is an inheritance handled? So if I have received something from a parent that is an inheritance to me, how is that handled and looked at by the court when I'm getting divorced from my spouse?
It's yours until it has been commingled. So anything you get in inheritance, let's say you get a house in an inheritance, is your house separate, because it's not marital property. Marital property is property that was accumulated or acquired during the course of the marriage using funds that were, generated through the course of the marriage. When you receive an inheritance, that is not money that you have generated through the course of the marriage. That was money that came in from an outside source that likely would have come to you whether you were married or not. That's what inheritances are. Grandma loves you so much, she left you her farm, in central Illinois. That land is your land until you make it communal. That being said, almost everything in a marriage becomes communal at some point, but notwithstanding that, your inheritance is generally protected. Now, it could be used in a contested divorce to calculate financial need. It's like, Judge, yes, you're right. Her salary is half mine, but she has $1 million inheritance. At which point the judge will say, yeah, on an equal basis, just looking at the statutory formula, an individual who makes twice as much as their spouse should actually pay spousal support. But in an equitable sense, this person doesn't need it. It would just be pile on to try to hurt this other person, because certainly you can keep your job, after you receive, your inheritance. But if you're a millionaire, the judge isn't going to make a guy who's a thousandaire pay you spousal support because your job, so to speak, it pays less than his. So it can be calculated in that way, but it won't be divided in the sense of, like, I get half the farm because I'm your spouse. It just won't happen that way.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And a lot of times I feel like when I'm talking to attorneys, we're talking in circles sometimes, because it's sort of like, well, the law says this, but it's not necessarily handled that way. And the law might say one thing, but you can always negotiate. So it gets really confusing sometimes trying to really understand where, really what is it? And there are some guidelines, is what I hear you saying, by the statutes. But everything becomes negotiable, and you can choose to settle outside of those guidelines as long as both parties are agreeing, and the judge doesn't think that there is really this inequitable balance to another party. And I have been in a courtroom and seen a judge say a lady was she was giving up the pension and saying, I'm not going to take any of this spouse's pension. And I think she was one of those women who didn't work or hadn't worked, and she seemed like she didn't really understand the process, but she was agreeing to it, she and her attorney. And the judge said, nope, I'm not going to do that. He felt like she didn't truly understand that she was entitled to that, and she was giving up something that was rightfully hers. And he said he didn't do that a lot, but in that case, he actually did not allow that agreement to go through in terms of this woman giving up part of her husband's pension. And so it makes sense that, you know, what you're saying, like, yeah, the guidelines would say this, but everything is about how all of this lays out and what it looks like on paper, and trying to get to something that looks equitable and what everyone has at their disposal. And so that makes sense. I get it. And it, like I said, sometimes it feels like we're talking in circles when you're trying to think about it. But you talked about how the rich people do it, right? And that's I want to talk through that one, because I think that's an important one. So when you're married early on and you're younger and you're both starting out, you don't have much, you don't necessarily think about the need for a prenup, right? And now, you know, you look back 10, 20 years later, you've acquired a lot because most of your working life has been through this marriage, or most of your working life has happened while you've been married. So now a lot of the things that you've acquired are now part of that equitable distribution. And so talk to us and the listeners about prenups. You know, a lot of things are pre-negotiated. This is the way I look at it now. We talk about, I think, I always come back to this in terms of Christianity. I feel like the way the church talks about it is, no, you're supposed to be two people joining into one, and you don't necessarily, everything should be joint. So you should have your joint accounts. You should not necessarily have a prenup because you're planning to fail. And I look at it now as it's insurance. It is insurance and an understanding going in, not that I'm expecting something is going to happen and the relationship is going to end, but it's just like, to me, car insurance. I don't expect that I'm going to have a car accident, but I have insurance. Now that's legally mandated. I don't expect that I'm going to have a house fire, but I have insurance to cover my house in case something does happen. And the same thing happens with life insurance and other things. So why don't we think about a prenup in the same way? Because what it does is help you on the other end to avoid some of the issues that could come up. So what are your thoughts around prenups? And then one of the listeners mentioned a postnuptial. I didn't even know that was a thing. So talk to us about prenups, how that helps or maybe hurts. I don't know. And then I have a question about a postnuptial. What is that? And is that really a thing?
Yes. When you don't have much to start off with, a postnuptial agreement is similar to a prenup. You sit down with your partner at some point and you all make an agreement, antenuptially or postnuptially, to how you're going to divide your assets. Not much different than a will or a trust. I mean, so if I could do my practice the way I wanted to, I would probably put together, a total package plan of when I'm doing estate plans. So, when people come to me for an estate plan, I talk about, they want to do a will. We do their wills. We do their power of attorneys. We do their living will, which is your do not resuscitate orders or your organ donation, however you want to handle that. Power of attorney for healthcare, power of attorney for property. And we also talk about, estate planning for, situations that are not death related. You got to remember that estate planning, typically people are thinking that they're going to die, but I always tell them in estate plans, most people get sick before they die. But then, you also have to look at it from the standpoint of bringing up the postnuptial or the antenuptial agreements, which is you might get divorced before you get sick or you die, or you might get divorced while you're sick, so you need to have a conversation about these things and be able to plan for the day after, because there are always a day afters. as for the church does a good job. It's just that it doesn't go all the way. Certainly you should have joint bank accounts. Certainly you should, share everything with your spouse, because
Man,
it's
I don't
kind
know if
of
I
really the
believe
only
that
way to,
anymore. I don't know if I believe that anymore.
I
Because,
mean,
like you
e-
said, commingling
every,
funds, it like you have something, you commingle it now. Like maybe that inheritance
mhm,
question earlier, you commingle it,
right.
and now it becomes marital property. And a lot of us don't understand that going in. And so you had no intention of
True.
making this marital property, but because now you have these things, it's a matter of us educating ourselves, which is one reason that I do this show, right? To make sure that people
Yeah.
understand a little bit more and they're not doing things that are detrimental to them in the process and and causing themselves
You,
more harm.
well, like I said, I have a different philosophy on a lot of things. I think the world went topsy turvy when we made everything about money. Divorce isn't about getting your life back for a lot of people. Divorce is about money. And I think that when you think about what the church is saying, is don't make everything about money. And so when we're doing estate planning, we're doing future planning, we're trying to deal with the conversation about money. Prenups don't lead to divorces. Prenups take care of the money conversation so you can focus on the relationship. Antenuptial agreements, estate plans, all those things, they take money out of the conversation. Let's talk about us. Let's talk about what we are trying to do and accomplish. Let's talk about our relationship. Let's talk about the things that led to the infidelity, our lack of communication. We don't talk about those things. So when I ask my first four questions of my clients, I'm trying to find out who they are, because everything is not about money. But in divorce, it's everybody's chasing their dollar. And so it really makes it a drag for lawyers who have a heart, because clients only think about the money. How much child support am I going to get? How much pension of hers am I going to get? Well, she makes more than I do. I want some of her salary until I get on my feet. Well, at some point you have to have a conversation like, well, what prevents you from getting on your feet? You know,
Right,
um,
right,
like, because that's not an economic question. That's a you question.
right.
We try to do this job in a way that helps our clients have a better life afterwards. But realistically, I mean, and this is why so many divorces are contested. It's just it's just about money for folk. And I'm like, all right, fine. Let's
So
just go through the formula. Y'all fight it. We'll tell you what it is. Because we don't, we just really, I mean, think about it. We've been talking for what, 30 minutes now, and like 98% of it has been about what I'm going to get, the money I'm going to not get. Just like, all right, then, missed
and
the
that's
whole
but
point.
that's
You
true.
didn't get,
That's
you
the
didn't get married
reality
because
of
of
it.
money.
But that's the
No,
reality
that's
of
the
it, right?
reality that people make.
Once you're at the point of divorce and you've decided already
Hmm.
the relationship's not working, so we're not even talking about the counseling and trying to get to a place where maybe there's reconciliation here. It happens sometimes, but
No.
usually you've gotten to a
Mhm.
place where you understand this isn't working and we're going to split. And really, the question before you at that
Right.
point really is all about the assets and the money that's involved. Now, I agree with you 100% that that should not be the main focus, because you have to create a life afterwards for yourself, that your ex-spouse will need a life afterwards, and the children, if you have children involved, you still have to have enough of a working relationship in order to make that work. And so I hear you saying the
Hmm.
prenup helps you take the money conversation out of it so that we can really be on a different page now. That's already predetermined. Let us now just talk about how we're going to manage this afterwards, especially if children are involved, because we're going to have
Yeah.
to continue to
Yeah.
interact with each other, whether we like it or not. For
Yes.
the benefit of these children,
Yes.
in order for them to be well, we still have to have some kind of working relationship and understanding. And
Yeah.
so, but what I don't understand yet, what's the difference between the prenup and the postnup, though?
Pre and post. Pre means before you get married, you put everything on the table and just decide how you're going to divide it. And then post is after you've accumulated a whole bunch of junk. You sit down and over a glass of wine and cheese, and, you start separating assets. And so once you do that and say, well, how about your pension? Well, I have such and such in my pension. Well, I have this much. All right, well, I'm not going to try to touch your pension if you don't touch mine, even though I have more in my pension than you do. Well, but then how do we balance that out this way? You can have that, which is why I asked my fourth question. Have you gone to marriage counseling? Because in marriage counseling, you don't always have to be talking about saving the marriage. For any people who are listening who have attended marriage counseling, that there are stages to the counseling sessions. So they're trying to increase your ability to communicate. They, see what you need to do to save the marriage if it's possible. But also there's a further down the line process where it's saying, okay, we both have recognized that this isn't working, and now we need to come up with our exit plan. People don't talk to one another. They fight with one another. And so my desire to do uncontested divorces is hardly ever utilized. I'm actually pretty good, not the best lawyer out there, but I don't suck at my job.
Uh-huh.
And if we can get people to actually sit down and talk, and look at what they have and say, okay, you've now made your full financial disclosure of everything you have, and I've made mine as well. And instead of, going to our attorneys and fighting everything out, let's sit down and talk about this.
So
now, of course, you're going to have one person who's going to overtalk the other.
What you're saying is the parties doing that, because I'm going to say this. I think that you are not your typical lawyer. So you're looking at, how do I help my client make this as painless as possible? How do I help them to have the conversations that they need to have so that this doesn't extend and become something that devastates them financially, or just the relationship, and they're no longer able to really work with each other. But my experience, I will say it that way, my experience is I didn't experience lawyers like that. And I went through 3 attorneys. I had the last one, absolutely fantastic at what she did. The others, they weren't necessarily trying to facilitate that kind of conversation in order to help us resolve this quickly. And I think it was because the longer it went, the more money that they made. So I don't think you're the typical kind of lawyer. You're probably the kind of lawyer I would have wanted to have in the process, because help me understand, what is it? What is really the thing? And then we can have some informed conversation, as opposed to stringing me along and kind of telling me, we need to go to another pretrial conference. We need to do, all of that costs money. And at some point you need to get to, what does the settlement statement look like? That didn't happen for a very long time in my process. Had I known up front that's something that should have happened, then I would have asked that question for that. And so that's why I asked you the question earlier around, what are the things that an informed client should come in and ask you as an attorney, so that you're trying to understand where they are in the process, so that you know how to maneuver and how to manage and how to kind of walk them to, here's how you get to resolution. But I do think there are plenty out there that aren't going to do that. They're like, hey, I see your financial disclosure. That's this financial affidavit. I see how much money I can make in this process. Let's string this out as long as possible. Once I realize that now there's not as much money left, all right, I'm going to help you get to a settlement. I surely would have appreciated that a year ago if we could have had that kind of conversation. So I get what you're saying, and I don't think that you're necessarily the typical attorney. I appreciate the approach a lot, where you're trying to help folks get to the end of it. Like you said, do an uncontested divorce. It's going to cost you less. It's going to help maintain the relationship moving forward. But I don't think that already happened. So, I heard you say, let me just make sure I close this out. I heard you say that the prenup and the postnup, the only difference is when you do it, before the marriage or during the marriage, so that, you're getting to the end, or after the marriage, I guess. So before marriage, post after marriage, you're just making the same kind of agreement. It's just a matter of when you do it. So that's cool. That is cool. So postnuptial is a thing. You can do it while you are married, before you ever find yourself going to divorce court, which will help you in the process of negotiating the divorce and kind of taking the money off the table. Because You're absolutely right. Once that gets in a person's head and it's about money, then I think we behave quite differently. We behave differently because either I'm going to I want something that's entitled to me, or I think it's entitled to me, or I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
lose something that I feel is mine. And so now we're both on guard and protective of whatever it is that we think we have, want, or deserve to have. And a lot of the source of conflict can come from there. That makes total sense. Or it's about the children, right? And I want to have my time with the children.
Allegedly.
The other person, you say allegedly. And I'm going to tell you that's true, because I think sometimes it's about the children because the children bring money with them. If you think about it, now there are some people who are real, they want to make sure they have their time to be the parent, to build, to feed into those children and make sure they have what they need. I think others see them as dollar signs. And it's okay, well, if I get this much time with the children, then I get this much money. Or it's a tool to hurt the other person, not necessarily thinking about what's really the best thing for the children. Okay. So I see you kind of, shaking your head and going, yep, this is sort of how it works. This is what I see. But I think we're going to, let's try to bring this to a close as we think about it. So I do want you to add, to help the listeners understand, what questions should they be asking an attorney? Ask them about their approach, right, to it. And many times some people want to have a bulldog of an attorney. Some don't want to, they're like, let's just try to do this the nicest way possible. But what else should they be asking?
Well, you're in Chicago, I'm in Chicago, so we can always look at the divorce checklist, and there's checklists of things that you have to do as you're going through the divorce. So you can ask, what are all of the things that we're going to need to make sure that this closes. You're going to need a transcript of the divorce proceedings. You're going to need financial affidavits. Financial affidavits require you to pull together all of your financial information. You're going to need the information for the custody and the child support. How do you want to allocate parental responsibility, parenting time? What are your thoughts on what the children's true economic needs are? Who has the better insurance? These are all those types of questions. In fact, I think if I were able to be a true, family planning type of lawyer, these would all be conversations that we would do, early on. Like even during the happy times when you're talking about, setting up a trust fund, because it turns out that everything that you're talking about in terms of prenups, postnups, trusts, planning, all of those things are related, which is why they all fall under the family law, estate planning guidelines. Because if let's say my issue is not all that I can get. My issue is I don't want to, my children to miss out on or lose on. Well, maybe you can make that as the central focus, say, hey, look, regardless of how you feel about me, how are we going to set things up so these kids are going to be okay? I have many clients who say they would hate to give their spouse a dime, but that they will put every dime into the children's college fund or to the children's trust fund, or they'd set up, a special insurance policy just for the kids. Like the issue when we talk about who the parties are, maybe one of the questions that the people should ask me is like, okay, what's important for me to process? And it's like, you got to kind of get your own mental house in order, because your mental health, your spouse's mental health, it determines how the case goes. People fight. Lawyers don't fight. Lawyers are echoers. We echo the energy that we get from our clients. If I got a chill client, we have chill divorces. We walk through there. I'm real calm about it. I got a client who's all up in arms. I kind of go full metal too. I've had clients whose spouses were abusive, and they hired me because they kind of think I got that grizzly in me, and they're like, he'll be afraid of you. I'm like, why? Why do you want to live in this spirit? It's just so.
Attorney
assess
Alfred
yourself.
Ivy, I think we're gonna have to
Yes, ma'am.
we're gonna have to close it out there, but it would be great to have you back at some point. I appreciate that you kind of ended on one of the things that's very important is to process your own mental well-being in the process of divorce, because that matters in how you proceed. So thank you so much for joining us. And for the listeners, I hope this was great information so that you are better on the other side. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Next time we'll talk about people.
It's that waking out your sleep with me massaging your feet. Yeah. It's that anything you